They're using the military, they're using societal power, ideology and religion. So it starts in Libya, goes to Yemen, and then goes to Sudan. Same model being played also in Somalia. The Emiratis were flying dozens and dozens of plane loads of arms into eastern Libya. The removal of that Morsi government. The UAE realized that the mosque was a threat, demobilizing the power of Islam.
Many affluent Muslims in the West will go to Dubai and feel very comfortable in their Islamic skin.
Mostly Sufi sort of strand of Islam was saying,
it's apolitical.
Apolitical.
The UAE has really been firmly on the side of Israel.
And they just hunt them down and kill them.
The United Arab Emirates has curated a string of anti-revolutionary non-state actors across the Middle East to serve the state's deeply secular interests. Abu Dhabi has waged a war against Islamic civil society under the pretext of fighting terrorism, and today acts as the primary means by which the small but effective Federation of Emirates prevents the rise of independent states in the Middle East. Behind every foiled attempt to wrestle power from Arab dictators is the UAE, which has used its petrodollars and economic prowess to curtail civil society activism. Its deep alliance with Israel and its Zionist project has given the UAE an unprecedented means to act as a spoiler in the region. Today we explore the tentacles of this project and its impact upon the hopes of much of ordinary Arab Muslim society. Now, our guest today is Dr. Andreas Krieg, an associate professor at the Defence Studies Department of King's College London and a strategic risk consultant. He recently penned a piece which forms the backdrop of our conversation on the assertive statecraft of the UAE. Now, please remember to press the subscribe button so that you will always be alerted to a new show. Additionally, you can donate to our preferred charity partner, Mal, which strives for excellence in the charity sector, by clicking on the link in the description. Mal does amazing work to bring much needed aid to our ummah in need. Dr. Andreas Krieg, welcome to The Thinking Muslim.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's lovely to have you with us. Now, I think this topic is a fascinating one, and you wrote an article recently for the Middle East Eye, which we'll put in the show notes, where you talked about just the sort of broad tentacles of the UAE, of Abu Dhabi, and how it acts maybe as a malign way in the Middle East. So I want to explore that today. Now, in your article, you talk about a lot of specific case studies, Sudan and Libya and Somalia and other countries. But I just want to get a general understanding before we drill down into the specifics. So you say in your article, Abu Dhabi has curated a multi-layered network of violent non-state actors, financiers, traders, political figureheads, and influencers to create bridgeheads in countries of strategic value to Emirati national interests. Explain that to me. Explain what you claim the UAE is doing in the Middle East and beyond.
Well, if we zoom out, I mean, first we need to understand the UAE is a small state by all conventional metrics. They're a country of 10 million, of which only 1 million are actually citizens, so 90% actually foreigners.
Yeah.
Around 500 billion in terms of their GDP. But in terms of size, the way we would look at the UAE as a country, it's a small state. But since 2011, since the Arab Spring, they've really emerged as a major player in this part of the world. Yeah. But they've always been somewhat plagued by an inherent capacity shortage, right? If you only have 1 million people, citizens, there were limits, traditionally there have been limits on what you can do in terms of statecraft. And so what they have been doing since the late 2000s and then very much kind of increased this since the Arab Spring is really curating, orchestrating networks of private individuals, outsourcing statecraft, if you will, right, to mercenaries, to violent non-state actors. Some of them they created, the most important ones they've actually created. They've given them the backing, the financial support that they required. But they also draw extensively on the market, like they'll use private corporations, they use multinationals or individual traders to get into countries and get into locations where they think they have an interest. And that's a very new way of looking at statecraft. It's very different from how we do it in the West, very different from how we do it today in the UK. But I'd say, historically, this is how Britain built the empire. It was done through the use of the market. And the UAE, I think, have learned from that. And they've done it very, very well, because not only by delegation do you achieve a level of plausible deniability, because you can always say, I have nothing to do with these people. These are just private individuals. These are just private companies. Some of them are based here. And even if they're invested or involved in sort of malign or illegal activity, which, as we're talking about smuggling of commodities, we're looking at money laundering, a lot of it's funneling and also channeling streams of corruption in and out of different countries. So if, looking at that, it looks like the UAE are doing something quite malign, but they can say, we have nothing to do with it because these are all private individuals, private companies. They do whatever they want to do. We just offer the jurisdiction to them. But it's obviously more sinister than that, because the UAE is not just offering their jurisdiction for these people to coincidentally operate out of the UAE. Every single company and individual that is involved in this sort of network-centric statecraft has been lured into the UAE by the leadership. So it's not coincidental, and it is strategic. And I think that makes the UAE very different from their neighbors in the Gulf, where, they're usually quite passive. The Emiratis are, especially Abu Dhabi, very assertive, very strategic, very measured in terms of how they align the means they have available to themselves with the ends that they want to achieve.
So you mentioned there 2011 as a pivotal moment in this sort of re-emergence of or emergence of UAE statecraft. Why 2011? What is it about this moment that makes this relatively small state, turns this small state into a fairly robust regional actor?
So a lot of things happened, but the key sort of moment was the fall of the regime in Egypt, and so the beginning of the Arab Spring, which obviously took place in late 2010 in Tunisia. But that kind of set in motion a massive development across the region. And the problem was not just that the old sort of powerhouses, authoritarian dictatorships collapsed, but that the old sort of guarantor of stability, the United States, weren't really doing anything about it. I mean, they were sitting on the fence, Obama at the time, president, sitting on the fence of should we or should we not support Mubarak? And then they dropped Mubarak, and then they endorsed the then freely elected Muslim Brotherhood president. And that for the Emiratis was an absolute pivotal moment, because they said, we're on our own. Nobody's really thinking strategically about security, stability in the region. We are on our own, and we have to take over responsibility. And so they did in 2011. In Libya, they got involved together with the Qataris. I mean, that was one moment where Qatar and the UAE actually during the Arab Spring were sort of cooperating, even though on different sides, but they were cooperating against the Gaddafi regime trying to bring stability in Libya. But the idea that they're a small state and they really need to curate and create power with whatever means available to themselves, that was a wake-up call where the Emiratis said, we are on our own and we have to take over responsibility. And so they did.